Story number 1. That was our final journey together. Jared, Ben, Lisa, Mia, and I, 5 childhood friends, agreed to spend a camping weekend deep in the Bitterroot Mountains to commemorate the end of an era. Years ago, when we were younger and more courageous, we had been there before. However, we had only hiked the outskirts at the time. We pressed closer this time. Beyond the paths, the woods, unmarked. Beside a black lake that was stagnant, we discovered an unspoiled clearing. The water has no reflections in it, not even ours. This area was left open for a reason, though, since the trees leaned back as if someone had passed through. It was already off by the second night. At dusk, Ben reported seeing a figure standing between the trees. Only a shadow. Still, watching. We dismissed it with laughter. However, the temperature dropped significantly that night. Too quickly. We looked at our phones, but there was no time or signal. Each gadget died after flashing static. We built a fire, large and intelligent. But like a living creature, the blackness pressed in close about it. Jared began to whistle, a strange song that none of us knew. I inquired as to what it was. He gave me a perplexed expression. I did not blow a whistle. It was not a joke. All of us were seated, still. But then, from just past the trees, the whistle sounded once more. In a hurry, Mia threw a wood onto the flames. The noise abruptly stopped. Ben was gone the following morning. His sleeping bag was still next to his boots. On a branch, his coat hung neatly. However, he had vanished. No effort. Not a trace. There was only a black, wet handprint on the tree above his sleeping spot. Lisa wanted to get out. Mia concurred. Jared, however, declined. "It is not done yet," he answered, pointing to the woods. We assumed he was stunned. We packed. Or attempted to. All of the trails had the same appearance. After hours of walking, we arrived back to the same clearing. We carved arrows to indicate trees. They vanished. We heard the rocks fall behind us when we flung them into the trees. The fire would not light at sunset. Then the matches went off. The tinder smoked. However, nothing was captured. Lisa sobbed. Jared hummed that song while staring into the darkness. Then they arrived. The voices come first. We all heard from someone we could trust. Mom, Lisa's sister, Mia's grandfather. Just past the darkness, they murmured, pleading, crying, requesting assistance. We snuggled together, fighting the darkness with flashlights. But the lights went out one by one, not all at once, slowly, like they were being drained by something. Silence descended as the final one flickered out. Then footsteps. They went around us, gently crunching on dry needles. Light at times, weighty at others. Human at times. Not always. When something touched Mia's arm, she let out a scream. A hand. Cold. Wet. It attempted to drag her. We all seized her and hung on. Lisa struck nothing when she swung a branch into the darkness. Only air. Then a spark appeared. Somehow, Jared managed to rekindle the fire. Everything halted when it flared up. No more footsteps. No more whispering. Mia, however, was stunned. "They only come when the fire dies," she repeated. "They only arrive after the fire has gone out." For the remainder of the night, we sat there and fed that fire. Nobody slept. Jared remained motionless, his lips still chanting that damned song as he gazed into the flames. Lisa was gone in the morning. Blood this time. It was soaked into her sleeping bag. In the woods dragged the marks, as though something massive had been circling us all night. The trees surrounding us were marked, clawed. We took off running, failed to pack, simply ran. The woodland looped, though. We continued to locate our clearing. But it became worse every time. The fire pit was already ignited once. We had not lit it, though. Another time, from inside the water, Mia's voice shouted out to us. She was standing next to me. "We were never intended to be here," Jared said. "This area serves as a feeding ground." "What did he mean?" I asked. He grinned. "I brought you for that reason." I took a step back. Mia let out a scream. Jared made a lunge. After tackling Mia, he attempted to drag her in the direction of the lake. He had black eyes. No whites. His lips was too long and too wide. I snatched up a flaming log and struck him with it. He did not yell. Simply went limp. However, Mia was gone when I turned around. The water began to bubble. In my mind, I heard her say, "Keep the fire going. I am alone myself now. In the clearing again. The flames are fading. I am not a sleeper. I abstain from eating. I give it anything I can, including branches, bark, a piece of my coat, or my own shoes, because I am aware of what awaits when it is released. They arrive only after the fire had extinguished." Story number 2. We set up our tents on the outskirts of Timber Hollow, a remote area of the woods that had not been visited in many years. That is what the locals said. Anyway, unbelievably towering, the trees leaned inward like giants listening in. The 5 of us, Malik, Tyler, Jordan, Sasha, and I, went camping for a final time to celebrate finishing college. The first 2 evenings were quiet and unremarkable. However, something changed on the 3rd night. We were sharing ghost stories while huddled around the fire. Sasha claimed to have seen something move and gestured toward a hole between the trees. We made a joke about her frightening herself. Later that night, however, when we were all zipped into our tents, I heard heavy, sluggish, dragging footsteps crunching. I initially believed Tyler was going to urinate. However, the steps continued beyond every tent without ever stopping. As I glanced under the zipper, I held my breath. At the perimeter of our camp was a tall man wearing a ripped park ranger outfit. He had a pallid, almost waxy face. However, it was his eyes, or rather, their lack of them, that terrified me silently. 2 holes deep and empty. No eyelids. No bleeding. Nothing but nothingness. He remained still, simply gazed at the flames. Then he turned and entered the woods without a word. I remained silent in the morning. No one else did either. Until Sasha remarked, "Last night, I saw someone here." Everybody froze. "I believed it to be a dream," Malik remarked. "But he did not have eyes." We realized then that it was not our imagination. We made the decision to go. But it was not that easy for Timber Hollow to let go. We kept coming back to the same clearing no matter which way we went. The trees were incorrect. When we were not watching, they would reorganize. The paths we marked disappeared. Tyler, believing we were the targets of some complex hoax, yelled at the woods. The fire refused to start that evening. All the logs and sticks we collected were wet. We could not get our lighters to spark. In order to pray for dawn, we clustered in the middle with dim lanterns and flashlights. The whistling was then heard, tuneless, sluggish, and low, from all sides. Then there were footsteps once more. Sasha burst into tears. Malik held a knife in his hand. Although it had functioned earlier that day, Jordan attempted to dial for assistance, but the screen was static. With the same uniform and vacant gaze, the man came out of the trees. However, he spoke this time. "You shouldn't have come." He did not speak loudly or angrily. It was insubstantial, as though someone had borrowed it. He gestured at Sasha. "You heard them. You returned them." She screamed. I didn't. Suddenly, her body lifted into the air, limbs rigid. She had blood dripping from her ears. Then there was stillness. Her body fell. We took off running. Where did not matter to us. Right away, the forest was a blur, with roots tripping our feet and branches tearing at our clothing. We ultimately found ourselves back in the same area, though I am not sure how long we ran. 5 flames were kindled, but just this time. 1 for each of us. 1 had previously been released. Sasha's. We remained seated till dawn. Nobody said anything. Nobody slept. The sun did not rise. It remained dark, permanently. Time passed. I have no idea how much. Jordan was the first to vanish. She appeared and vanished in an instant. "I saw something take her," Malik muttered. "Hands," he said. "Too many hands." Tyler lost his mind. Attempted to burn the woodland. When it did not burn, I laughed. Screaming, he dashed into the forest. He was never seen by us again. It is just Malik and me now. Or it was. His tent was deserted this morning. No effort. No blood. Only his boots neatly arranged next to each other. Additionally, a message was etched into the ground from the ashes of the last fire. He just has to remember one. I believe that I am the one. I am unable to go. Now, the dude shows up every night. He sits beside the unlit fire on the other side of me. He has stopped talking. He simply waits. And I believe he is waiting for me to lose my identity. Because he will also remove my face if I forget. Additionally, another person will camp in Timber Hollow. And he will be seen by another person, the eyeless man. After that, it will start over. Story number 3. No map showed the Dead Man's Ridge Trail. The majority of residents denied its existence, and those who were aware of it would not mention its name. However, Theo had discovered an old ranger's logbook in a second-hand shop, yellowed pages describing Sector 9, Ridge Black, and a shabby trail sign with the simple words, "Do not follow the light" written on it. Naturally, we did as instructed. Theo, Claire, Mason, and I made up the 4 of us. Thrill seekers and urban adventurers. We'd camped everywhere from abandoned mines to dried-up lake beds. We had never been shaken by anything. It was Dead Man's Ridge. The hike began rather routinely. Trees that are dense. The silence was as dense as fog. However, things became quieter as we descended farther. The birds disappeared. No wind. The mossy ground seemed to engulf even the crunch of our boots. Theo discovered the first marking carved into a tree at dusk. It was a simple lantern with a childlike design that glowed with something that seemed new. Hours ago, but not decades ago. We dismissed it with a laugh and made camp next to a shattered fire pit that was obviously old, with charred stones and moss growing over it. We were sitting in the circle that night when a lantern arrived on the ridge above us. A faint yellow light that seemed to be supported by a walker and swayed slightly. We thought it might have been a lost hiker or a ranger. Mason yelled. Nothing happened with the light. It blinked out instead, then came back nearer. That is what it kept doing. Closer. And nearer. Then it ceased to move. Hovered just out of grasp at the ridge's edge. We were not scared enough to flee, though. Not yet. We made a mistake. I woke up to the sound of breathing at around 2 in the morning. Not too loud, but profound. Like someone speaking over their nose while standing right outside my tent. Slowly, I unzipped it. There was nobody. However, the lantern was suspended from a tree, a foot away from my face. I let out a yell. Everybody awoke. Claire stumbled over a root as she ran in its direction. The lantern was gone when we assisted her up. However, something had burned into the bark where it had been hanging. Observe me. Theo demanded that we depart at sunrise. However, morning never materialized. The sky remained the same shade of gray, neither morning nor night. The compass whirled. Phones had issues. Worse, Mason began to transform. He gave up eating, refused to speak, simply gazed into the forest. He responded, "I hear it," when we pressed him. What? What? Theo inquired. The lantern. It makes a humming sound. He was gone that night. No effort. No indications. From the inside, only his tent zipped. And just over the ridge, a fresh lantern, lighted and waving. Claire snapped, imploring us to go even if it meant going blind. However, Theo declined. Stated that we have to locate Mason. The lantern led the way, and discovered just more trees. More lanterns, too. Dozens. Everything is light. All swinging. Then the yelling began. Not Mason. Claire was the one. She pointed to one of the lanterns and yelled. "That is my voice." We paid attention. Her voice was heard, like an echo in a jar, trapped inside the glow, constantly pleading for assistance. Then they dragged Theo. From the ground sprang something, a lot of things, sharp fingers, slender arms. Screaming, they yanked him into the ground beneath the lantern circle. When I touched the dirt, my palm burned as I attempted to grab him. Claire made an effort, but the arms disregarded us. In seconds, Theo was gone. Claire and I were alone now. We took off running. No guidance. No place to go. Right away. We were hurt and bleeding after tripping over roots and falling into shallow ditches. We finally fell, splintered and decaying, behind an ancient wooden watchtower. Once more, the lanterns emerged, lined the way to us one by one. Claire then began to hum. Horrified, I turned to face her. She was in tears. She was not moving her lips, though. The hum intensified. He is inside me, she said. I retreated and pleaded with her to resist. However, she added, I want to go with him. As she gave me a dim look, she got up, walked in the direction of light, and disappeared into it. I am here now, alone. The lanterns continue to wobble. They are awaiting. For me. One currently sits directly at the tower's base. A fresh color flickers on its flame. Red. It hums as well. A hum that is exactly like me. How long I have been here is unknown to me. However, I am forgetting. Places and names. My own face. The lamps continue to murmur. I will follow shortly. Since your light will merge with theirs. You never leave the house. Story number 4. It was entirely by chance that we discovered the clearing. It was intended to be a tract of wilderness between two decaying towns, unmapped and unspoiled. 5 of us pals were following a lost trail from an old notebook that Theo's uncle had left behind. It claims that the location was formerly known as Dry Maw. Nobody in the community could recall that name. The trees' trunks were too wide and too close together, and they were thicker than normal. The sun hardly showed. Finding a level area to set up the tents took us 2 hours. Marnie did not discover it until we had unpacked. Beneath the fallen leaves, there was a beautiful circle of tiny, fragile bones. Clean, arranged. Tooth marks were still visible on some. We ought to have departed. Rob, however, kicked the bones aside after laughing. Coyotes most likely kill. We should not begin telling ghost stories just yet. The fire would not light correctly that evening. It began high, burning blue for a moment, and then died down as if it were having trouble breathing. The air had an unpleasant odor, wet but dry, like decaying pork in an attic with old paper. The clicking was then audible, rhythmic and light, originating in the woods. We initially believed it to be insects. After that, we realized it was imitating us. We would always pause for a moment after laughing, and then the same chuckle would return. A little warped, a little more slowly. After that, none of us laughed. We huddled together as the fire, feeble as it was, finally took. Cam rewound the tape he had been playing since we got there. Cam had brought his ancient tape recorder to record our journey. Silently, we listened. Wind, leaves, our voices, then inhaling, heavy, guttural, as if something were releasing its breath from below. And behind that, there is more clicking. Cam sped up. However, the clicking persisted. Louder, closer, then a fresh sound. The voice said, "You brought it back." In a low, gravelly murmur. We stopped. By itself, the recorder clicked off. Marnie wanted to go, but the track was almost impossible to follow without light, and it was already too dark. We decided to share a tent. The 5 of us. We closed the door with a zip. I locked it, sat quietly. The wind died around 2 a.m., dead quiet. The tent then started to breathe. Like a lung, the fabric pulsed slowly inward and outward. The flashlight's batteries had melted as Cam reached for it. Melted, literally. His hand was freezing when I touched it. Then, start scratch. It suddenly came from all sides of the tent. The nylon is being pulled down by long, sluggish claws. Something moved slowly and purposefully around us. The back was where the scratching ceased. Then, through the flimsy fabric, a voice murmured, "You have entered the circle. You are now ours." We did not get any sleep. At dawn, or what we thought was dawn, we emerged. The sun had not yet risen. However, everything was more optimistic. Whiter, bleached, the grass, the trees. Rob had even returned the bones he had kicked out, now forming 5 tiny individuals with their limbs and legs curled up like sleeping kids. Marnie's scarf was tied around the neck of one of the skeletons. Marnie raced and shouted. We went after her. However, she had left. as if she had never been. Desperate, we quarreled, each of us certain that we had only just seen her. The bones were then visible once more. There were just 4 figures huddled up in the grass now. We did not talk. We simply packed. Rob was the driver. By the time we got to the highway, we were bleeding and scratched from powering through the brush rather than simply using the trail. The worst thing, though, is this. Nobody remembers Marnie back home. Not her mother. It is not her job. Not her presence. We even looked at previous group photos, and there are just 4 of us. However, I do recall. Cam does too. Because when I woke up 2 nights ago, I discovered a circle of bones at my bed's foot. Pristine. Arranged. Waiting.